Good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Hayward. Thank you all so much for joining us at our annual National Reconciliation Week webinar hosted by the Australian Water Association and Water Services Association of Australia. Apologies for the little bit of a delay. We've had some technical difficulties this morning, but we're in the process of eliminating them as we speak. But without further ado, it's really awesome to have such a number of people together here in our National Reconciliation Week webinar. Before we kick off our amazing presentations today, I'd like to open up for some acknowledgements and some reflections from our two CEOs, our two leaders. Firstly, Adam Lovell and then Corinne Cheeseman. Hi, Adam.
Thanks so much, Taylor. Good afternoon, everybody, and great to be here. Um, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands of which we're meeting across Australia today. I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Camaragal, just north of the harbour here in Sydney. I'd also like a very special acknowledgement to First Nations people joining us on the call today and acknowledge a deep connection to land and waters over many thousands of years. Uh, all in is the theme for this year's Reconciliation Week, and I'd just like to reflect that from WASA and from AWA's perspective, we are absolutely all in. And I would like to shout out to Taylor with all the fantastic his work that Taylor is doing as our First Nations lead at WASA. Uh, in particular, what does that mean for what we do day to day at WASA? Well, important part of what we do is advocate for better clean water and sanitation services for all communities, in particular Aboriginal communities that are often forgotten or have been left floundering over many years. And so it's a huge part of what we do, and bringing together communities from across the country and our service providers to lift all the boats is the best way to put it. But to advocate as hard as we possibly can to federal and state governments to continue funding and to continue uplift in skills and jobs. It was really interesting last week. We held a session in the WASA stream on reconciliation, in particular, the way our members are evolving with their reconciliation action plans. And it was just an amazing session just to see how much work our members are putting into reconciliation action plans to keep improving. And we were absolutely honoured to have two First Nations speakers there, Veronica from Sydney Water, who's joining us, and Richie Allen, a Ngunnawal man who works with Icon Water. One of the most interesting things I found was that the agreements and initiatives that might have been put in place through traditional reconciliation action plans frameworks that we might be used to are actually being much more aligned now to the aspirations of local communities. So sort of a little bit of a breakaway maybe from the traditional framework that's been put in place. I think is a really exciting development, and it actually means that relationships are growing stronger and tighter between the water sector and Aboriginal communities within the local context and to which we serve. I'd just like to finish in the words of Richie Allen, the Ngunnawal community member who joined us and spoke really passionately about his engagement with Icon Water over many years and just how that's all progressing. And he said, we get great results together when community is let in and organisations listen and learn. So I'm really eager for today's session and looking forward to the rest of the day. And with that, I'll hand over to Corinne.
Thanks, Adam. This year, the theme All In recognises that meaningful reconciliation requires honesty, truth-telling and transparency about our individual and organisational reconciliation journeys. Being all in means acknowledging the past, listening to First Peoples' voices, reflecting on challenges and committing to genuine ongoing action. It means moving beyond intention to accountability and beyond statements to relationships and beyond commitment to action. That message resonated strongly last week at Oswater 26 in Brisbane, where we came together during National Reconciliation Week to learn, listen and reflect on the role we can play in advancing reconciliation. Throughout the conference, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders, artists, knowledge holders, and water professionals challenged us to think differently about our responsibilities to water, country, and community. The conference opened up with a smoking and cleansing ceremony led by Aaron Ruska and the Ngunnawal Yagara Aboriginal Dance Company, creating a powerful moment of reflection and respect before the week began. The opening keynote speaker, Cameron Costello, a proud Quandamooka traditional owner, who challenged us to rethink water not simply as a resource, but as a living entity deeply connected to identity, culture, and responsibility. His reflections reminded us that caring for water is inseparable from caring for country, culture, and future generations. We also had the privilege of learning through art and cultural practice. As Ozwater's first People's Artist in Residence, Felicity Chapman from Deadly Weavers invited delegates to experience water through storytelling, natural dyes, and cultural knowledge, offering a powerful reminder that connection to water is not only technical or environmental, it is deeply cultural, spiritual, and relational. Alongside this, delegates were able to engage with Reconciliation Action Plan artworks displayed throughout the conference, celebrating First Peoples' creativity, stories, and perspectives. Across the week, conversations focused on what it means to move from commitment to action. Speakers shared honest reflections on successes, setbacks, and lessons learned, reminding us that reconciliation is not always comfortable. As Ngunnawal Kalamaroi custodian Richie Allen said during one of the conference sessions about that reconciliation is about doing things together, walking alongside community, challenging ourselves, and being prepared to learn from both progress and mistakes. That spirit of being all in is what brings us together today. And this webinar is an opportunity to continue those conversations, to hear diverse perspectives, share experiences, and reflect on how each of us and our organisations can contribute to reconciliation in meaningful and lasting ways. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to hearing the speakers and the discussion today.
Thanks, Corinne. Thanks, Adam. Really awesome to set the scene with both of you along today and sharing the reflections from an amazing event last week that crossed over significantly with National Reconciliation Week. That brings us to the presentation component of today's webinar. We've got two really amazing speakers, of which I'll introduce just before their respective sessions. First off today, we've got Program Director, Aboriginal Strategy and Reconciliation, Carolyn Davis from Water Corporation here with us to speak a little bit about Water Corporation's journey, the challenges and the successes to date, and a little bit about what comes next. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm really happy to be here. I'm just going to load up my presentation. So if you just bear with me. There we go. Hoping everyone can see that along with us today. So just before I get started, I just really would like to acknowledge traditional owners from acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands of which we meet today and pay respects past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm meeting with you today from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar Nation and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians of the land of which I'm meeting here with you today. And I also like to extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people meeting with us here today from across many lands and nations around the country. And thank you for having me here. I've been asked here today to provide an overview of what we're doing at Water Corporation in WA. So I have I'm a Noongar woman of Minang descent, and I was born and raised on Whadjuk Budja, and in my day job I have the privilege of working in reconciliation at Water Corporation, and in my voluntary life I'm a board member for Reconciliation WA, and I have been doing that for the past 8 years. and I get a lot of satisfaction out of working in reconciliation and also doing what I can in my personal life. So today I'm just going to share a little bit about what we continue to do at Water Corporation to drive reconciliation and be all in. For those of you who don't know about Water Corporation in WA, so we're just the principal provider of water, wastewater and drainage services in WA. We're a state-owned utility, so we're accountable to the WA government and the Minister for Water. And we have services that extend across 2.6 million square kilometres and provide services to over 2.5 million Western Australians. And we're also responsible for improving water quality in approximately 141 Aboriginal communities across WA. So we have quite a large footprint. Within Water Corporation, we have some business areas devoted to driving those initiatives, but also supporting our reconciliation journey. So we have a business unit for Aboriginal heritage and native title, and they ensure that we're compliant and we meet our legislative but community needs. We have Aboriginal Community Water Services, who the business area driving the improvements in water quality for those 141 communities. We have an Aboriginal Employment Development team that provides wraparound support for our 200 employees. And we have a talented Aboriginal recruitment and talent acquisition team that help us find amazing people to come and join our family at Water Corporation. We also have a Water in Aboriginal Culture schools program where we have our colleagues go out into schools and educate children and young people about Aboriginal culture and water to create our allies and champions for the future. And then there's my section, which is the Aboriginal Strategy and Reconciliation team. My next slide, I've put up a bit of an infographic of the journey of reconciliation at Water Corporation, and this stretches back 20 years. So it's at this point I have to recognise the incredible work of some of our Aboriginal leaders who have worked at Water Corporation over the years to drive reconciliation, and a couple of shouts out to First Nations leaders, Lynette Lund and Colleen Castle, who drove reconciliation uninterrupted for those 20 years. As you can see here, we've got at the top right-hand corner, we have our most recent stretch wrap, which is coming to a close. And so we're already started looking at how we can improve our reconciliation journey. And yesterday, today, tomorrow strategy, which was launched in 2022, which is when I commenced at the organisation. A little bit about yesterday, today, tomorrow. So this was a call to action from the Aboriginal people at the corporation, who said we need to do better. We need to drive initiatives across the corporation to make sure that we do action the change that we need to have to be a better employer of choice, strengthen partnerships, and make sure that we drive reconciliation in a meaningful way. This program, so when this was being developed, there was a statewide consultation with Aboriginal people, staff, and our former colleague Taylor, who's here today, was a part of this consultation, and that process identified 5 focus areas which still remain true for us today, and powerful areas that we will continue to focus on into our next reconciliation action plan. But we really wanted to become a leader in agreement making, an employer of choice, so that helped build careers and have our colleagues into higher level positions and decision-making positions across the corporation. that we had meaningful partnerships with Aboriginal communities to deliver equitable water services, ensure that our ways of working are culturally inclusive and safe and informed, and that our progress is transparent and available for everyone to see. That process led to a series of 14 work streams across the corporation in the past 3 years to ensure that we were able to meet those focus area statements. So whilst we have progressed significantly across achieving those 14 deliverables, we know that we still have work to do, and yesterday, today and tomorrow. So the tomorrow aspect, we still are working towards that vision of where we want to be as a reconciliation organisation. The next slide I have here shows, so this is available on our intranet page for everyone to see how we're tracking. So out of those 14, we have completed 11, and we have 3 of those initiatives that are still in progress, and they will be either completed or significantly progressed by the end of this calendar year. Next is our actual reconciliation action plan. So we had our yesterday, today, tomorrow strategy sitting alongside our reconciliation action plan. Our RAP's focused areas were really around the relationships, respect, opportunities, and governance. And that goes back to that transparency around how we as an organisation are tracking along the commitments that we have signed up to deliver on over that 3-year period. So in our themes, the focus areas for our RAP, we really wanted to focus on respectful engagement and meaningful partnerships. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices included in decision-making, uplifting the cultural competency of our non-Aboriginal colleagues, providing opportunities, so that's not only for procurement, but definitely around employment and retention, and our governance, making sure that we have mechanisms to include the views and perspectives of First Nations colleagues, but also holding ourselves accountable as an organisation and delivering on our RAP. To support how we deliver our RAP, we have a RAP plan and YTT governance structure. So we use our RAP steering group to ensure that we have oversight of what's being delivered. And on the RAP steering group, we have a co-chair arrangement. So we have our CEO, Pat Donovan, and our First Nations co-chair, Clinton Lund, who have oversight of the plan and make sure that we're supported to be able to deliver this. Sitting under that, we have 4 subcommittees. We have one devoted to Aboriginal employment, so that looks at where we need to make improvements, and currently we're very aware that we need to do a lot more regarding retention. We have Aboriginal procurement subcommittee. We, as a large utility, we enter into large infrastructure projects, so we need to make sure that First Nations businesses are going to be engaged in a meaningful way that not only provides them with the opportunity to do work for us, but it helps grow their business. We have an Aboriginal engagement subcommittee to make sure that we engage with our Aboriginal communities out across the state in respectful and meaningful ways, and also supporting the work of the Aboriginal Community Water Services area. And then we have an events and activations subcommittee. So that subcommittee helps deliver NAIDOC Week and Reconciliation Week events. So I'm a part of that, and we have been busy delivering Reconciliation Week activities today. And once I've finished being with you here today, I'll be off to deliver an event this afternoon. With our reconciliation action plans, there were 85 deliverables. Of those 85, we've completed 75. We still have 8 in progress. We have 1 on track, which is the wrap-up report that we all have to submit to Reconciliation Australia. But we have 1 that's off track, and we know that that is going to be part of the focus area and is our truth telling, and that is around Aboriginal employment. We have not been able to shift the dial on the number of Aboriginal people we employ for the past 3 years. We've been consistent at 200, and we know we need to do more to become an employer of choice. So we are working extremely hard in that area to put in place some initiatives that help support our colleagues. I think one of the big themes that we've been hearing throughout Reconciliation Week and being all in is truth telling. We know that truth telling requires truth listening and truth actioning, and to be in this reconciliation program, in the RAP program, it is my belief and my colleagues' belief that we really need to get this right. So what we have been doing on this journey towards a meaningful truth-telling process is we have Camberang Aboriginal Employee Conference. Now, this has been set up for a while and was set up by one of our former colleagues, Colleen Castle, to really bring people together, but also provide an opportunity for people to voice where they think that they could see improvements for the employee experience. There's nothing like having a lived experience feed those changes that we need to make. And in between our Camberang conference, that happens every 3 years now, the Aboriginal Employment Development Team have set up Our Country, Our Conversations gatherings. Now, they're place-based gatherings, and they work hard to support employees identify themselves within community, but also within the organisation, and strengthen relationships and support. They're being carried out as we speak across the state, and we're getting some really, really positive feedback on what we could be doing better to support our colleagues. We have the RAP steering group subcommittee structure, which I mentioned earlier, but we really have that focus on making sure that we've got Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people in that, so that we're elevating the voices of our colleagues. Most recently, within my section, we've created a team lead policy and truth telling. So this position will be leading several of our truth-telling projects going forward in a meaningful way, and really, really acknowledging the impact that our service, although we get water into homes, has had a significant impact on culture, law, and creation stories. That's a work in process. That person has only been in the job 3 weeks. And then within that team, we have our Aboriginal Impact Policy Review Service, and that service is looking at all the policies that we have to ensure that there's, if there's any potential impact on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employees, and providing feedback, input, and changes that might need to be made through that. So we're very excited about becoming part of that ongoing policy review process. My next slide is really talking about the next steps. So we know we have a lot to do. We know that whilst we have a stretch RAP in place, and this is our third one, we'd be looking at going into our fourth. We know that we're not necessarily genuinely ready to take that elevate RAP step. Our most important focus area is our people, and making sure that our colleagues are well looked after and want to stay here. So we will be forging through onto our fourth reconciliation action plan. But in regards to our journey into truth telling, we know that we have to build the capability of our non-Aboriginal colleagues in this space. We know that we need to know that cultural capability is consistent and well understood across the organisation, so that when we do truth-telling initiatives, we leave people better off, and not feeling that the process was not fair and equitable. We also are entering into some dual naming projects. So our first ones are looking at our head office in Leederville in Perth, and having a look at this, not only the name of the building, but also the story of where that building is located. So we'll be working with the First Nations business to do that piece of work. We know that we need to elevate the voice of our colleagues within the organisation. So we'll be having a look in our next plans on how we can elevate the voices of our colleagues to make sure that we deliver on our next RAP, but also that the decisions that are being made about us are being made with us. We're also very keen to make sure that any of our RAP deliverables are embedded within the corporate plan. We want to make sure that we deliver our plan as a business as usual, not as an afterthought. We want to be right there in the mix. So that is some of the work that we're currently undertaking at the moment. We also want to increase education opportunities for our non-Aboriginal colleagues around First Nations perspectives and knowledge of country. This is going to be vital to delivering any of our RAPs or any initiatives or delivering our services, particularly in improving water quality in Aboriginal communities. And we also want to make sure that in our next reconciliation action plan, we focus on truth telling. So we will be working with Reconciliation WA, Reconciliation Australia, and also our other colleagues in the water industry on how we can respectfully do that. So that brings my presentation to a close. I do have a slide for any questions. So I guess over to you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks so much. And just to be clear with everyone, Veronica's just had some tech issues and has dropped out. So we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation with Carolyn and a few reflections that I took from that conversation so far, whilst hopefully Veronica gets back online and can join us shortly. So, I mean, all in, right, is what I heard from Carolyn's presentation. The ability to create dedicated time and space and energy for multiple people, not just First Nations people, to kind of wear the load of doing this stuff, I think is amazing. So I heard, we've got dedicated teams that span the breadth and depth of the organization in different value-adding functions. We've got dedicated subcommittees that are doing work to kind of share the load and the heavy lifting, and that sounds like it's working really well. And we're being really clear and open and honest about our performance, where we are doing things really well and how they've shaped up, and equally where we've still got some work to do. Carolyn, what's that kind of? I know you said you've been at the corporation for kind of 3 years. What has kind of some reflections been from yourself thinking about day one joining the organisation to say today and this National Reconciliation Week? has there been a noticeable change for you?
I think when I first started, it was is learning how big and exciting Water Corporation is. I have worked for large organisations, government departments before, but it was just all the different components. So I guess when, as an Aboriginal person coming in, it's not only learning about the organisations, but it's learning what our colleagues have been doing and the great work that they have done. I think one of the things that I I would have enjoyed was spending more time with some of those leaders before they left the organisation to continue that journey. But I think what we've seen through through the yesterday, today, tomorrow strategy, which I know you were a part of, Taylor, in its development, was that massive commitment, not only from the whole organisation to understand we need to do better, but that backing that up with a financial commitment. Having worked in reconciliation for well over a decade, not seeing any organisation to commit to this journey as strongly as Water Corporation has. That's been the like a game changer and has helped us establish some senior positions, helped us establish some great initiatives, but also means that we can do some of that future planning, and particularly around truth telling as well. Hope that
Brilliant.
answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I
Yeah.
guess maybe just to close out, what are some of the things that are on this week for Water Corp and your National Reconciliation Week celebrations?
Yeah, so last week, bit of a plug for Rec WA. We had the big breakfast, which was broadcast across the nation. So we had some really powerful.
Seems like some tech issues might be might be going around, Caroline. Bit patchy there. Um, Hopefully we get you back on. But in the meantime, I think what we'll do is I can see that we've got Veronica back now. So we
Sorry,
might.
that
All good. All good. There we go.
that's happened to me this morning. It just zipped out. So yeah, we had the Reconciliation Week breakfast, and we had Narelda Jacobs there giving a powerful speech, call to action, and particularly focusing on truth telling and addressing cultural load of mob in organisations. And if you want to see that, that's available on SBS On Demand. We always participate in a watch party. So we do that from head office as well as have a table there.
Amazing.
We've also, um, like a low key thing, but we set up a couple of desks outside the main entrances of our depots to bring people in to start having a say about our next reconciliation action plan and having some of those conversations. So we enticed people in with a reconciliation cupcake and made them answer 3 questions to help us in that journey. We've got another one up at Balcatta today, but I think our big event is, and it really aligns to truth telling, is we've got the crew from Yokai coming to present Genocide in the Wildflower State, which is the story of stolen generations here in WA, also available on SBS on demand. And Taylor, if you're around, you're more than welcome to come along and join us. So that's what's happening for Reconciliation Week. My team,
Fantastic.
we deliver it, and we'll as soon as we finish that, we'll be doing NAIDOC week.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Carolyn. Amazing to hear what you're up to at Water Corporation and the journey. Veronica, thanks for bearing through all the tech issues and rejoining us. Veronica is the First Nations Inclusion Specialist at Sydney Water and is going to be speaking about their reconciliation journey and what's next for Sydney Water. Welcome, Veronica.
Thanks, Taylor. So I'll just share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. It's been one of those days. Yeah. Are you seeing my screen yet?
No, we're not, Veronica. Maybe it might be
Sorry.
okay if you just speak to your slides and we can imagine.
Let's just go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about our reconciliation journey and the past, I guess, 4 years that Sydney Water's been on this journey. And firstly, just acknowledging that I'm joining you from direct country here in Western Sydney in New South Wales, and just paying my respects to elders past and present. So we've been on our reconciliation journey, which started officially, you could say, with our launch of our first RAP in 2021. That wasn't, I guess, the beginning of our RAP journey. We were I guess, making plans about reconciliation and doing some terrific stuff before I even joined the organisation in 2020. So a lot of work was being done in the background and a lot of work from some keen Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal employees across the business. Then we received some direction from an incoming managing director who asks the question, do we have a reconciliation action plan? And if not, why not? So that kind of started the ball rolling, you could say, in getting our reconciliation plan in progress. And I guess there's been three kind of key people that who are long-term First Nations employees who have been integral to part of the planning for our RAP. And with those three employees, they have over like 70 years of experience between them. So they brought a lot of history and knowledge around the organisation, which was fantastic to hear, and fantastic to have those voices involved. So I guess from the launch of our RAP in 2021, we made a great start. Like we established a lot of firsts for Sydney Water, and that included the development of our First Nations cultural awareness module, which was open for all employees. So we never had anything like that at Sydney Water before. So it was an e-learn, and then we started to build on that cultural learning, which was fantastic to see. And now we've got to the point where we're doing organisational cultural immersions, which is open to all employees to join those. Another first for us was the establishment of a First Nations employee network. So bringing our First Nations employees across the organisations together a couple of times a year. And that proved to be a great point of contact and connection for our employees, because, as you know, with the water utility, you've got people spread out, working in operational areas and corporate. So it was great that we could bring everyone together a couple of times a year. Another first for us was our Aboriginal procurement participation plan. So our procurement team led the work there in getting the plan together using New South Wales government APPP, and just understanding what that meant for Sydney Water and how we could implement some targets and put those targets into our contracts, and also push that out to the contractors that we work with. So implementing a lot of change in there around direct spend and indirect spend within the organisation. That's been a massive piece of work with, a live dashboard that everyone in the business is able to have access to and see where exactly our spend is and what businesses we've onboarded. This year in particular, we had a supply chain expo, and we showcased 5 of our First Nations businesses that we worked with. So it's about promoting them to the organisation and to our contractors. I guess moving through 2022, we also started to develop partnerships with various organisations, and particularly looking at organisations that could help with our recruitment. In our initial RAP, we had a 2% target for First Nations employment or representation. Still struggling with that. It hasn't been easy to meet that, but we've made some wins in terms of implementing a traineeship program. We had 5 trainees in different parts of the business. All of the 5 completed their qualification, and we still had 3 who are working full-time with us to have gone on to do other things, but we've seen amazing success in that area. But there's also changes within the organisation, and I guess it's been a credit to the people within Sydney Water to keep the momentum going. As change can, although it's inevitable, it does sometimes slow down progress, but we've continued to push, and our recruitment team has been looking at ways that we can support the organisation and build on that cultural capability, and for parts of the business to understand why it's important to look at some of the systemic barriers that Aboriginal people face across employment in general. So I guess shifting from our first RAP, we moved into our second Innovate RAP. And this RAP had a different focus. It was more about connecting and listening to stories from our communities that we worked with. So listening and learning and letting our communities lead the work that was important to them. And we saw that in different projects, particularly cultural burns that happened at Warragamba with the Warragamba community, or Gundungurra community, who raised, I guess initially it was just a question about clearing some rubbish on some land, which then morphed into a bigger project. And we've seen a couple of cultural burns happen in that community, and now ownership is on the community. So we're just there to support. So that's been a great initiative that has been led by some very dedicated people in our cultural heritage and property team. I guess the other thing that we've seen is, I guess, a deeper understanding about partnerships and how we can develop those. And we yesterday had a reconciliation panel. We had 3 of our partner organisations come along and speak to how to drive change through action. So looking at, what are some tangible things that we as an organisation can do. And I guess one of the key messages from that discussion was about being deliberate and intentional with what we're committing to. And also, an interesting point that was made was around taking the time to talk and to be engaged with community. Sometimes, organisations have projects and budgets and deadlines, and are just sometimes just focusing on that. But giving yourself permission to, take some time out and just connect. Forget about work, listen, and connect with community. And that it makes your job a lot easier, I guess, when you understand, particularly when you're working on projects that are impacting country. I guess one of the other big things that I might just touch on is we had just completed a review of our reconciliation action plan. So all our reconciliation journey over the past 4 years. And we've taken a deliberate step to kind of stop where we are at the moment and look at building a First Nations strategy. The reason we're doing that is, I guess, part of it, the review called out, strengthening our governance and accountability within the organisation. So that's the focus. We don't know what the future may hold. It may be another RAP in the future, but at the moment we want to ensure that we're doing the right thing and making sure that we have that governance and accountability in place. So I think it's a very brave step for the organisation to do that. And I think we've also done amazing work and things that are in our RAP that we are very proud of and we should be proud of. But we haven't stopped. We're not stopping the work that we're doing. We've got a lot of projects that have come out of our reconciliation plan that will continue while the strategy is being developed. So just I guess a quick overview of where we have been over the last 4 years, but we're excited to see also what the future holds for Sydney Water as well in terms of building our reconciliation out. So thank you.
Fantastic, Veronica. Thank you so much. I'll just share some reflections that I had listening to you speak about Sydney Water's journey and what that's looked like. Similar to Carolyn, we heard that Sydney Water employs dedicated people, creates space and time and energy for them to go and do this really meaningful and important work. I heard that there was, we need to be deliberate and intentional once we commit to doing some things, but they absolutely have to be informed by community, and that takes time, that takes care, that takes learning and listening, and that time to connect. So, spend that time developing those relationships, and then once community are clear on what's needed, back them up and go and do the thing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Equally similar to the Water Corporation journey in that, we're doing some things really great and we're owning those things. Equally, we're doing some things where we might be underperforming and we need to own those as well. So tremendous presentation. Thank you so much, Veronica, for grinding through the kind of barriers to today. It's been awesome to hear your story alongside Carolyn's in today's National Reconciliation Week webinar. That brings today's formal proceedings to a close. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us in this annual webinar. I'd like to extend a big thanks to Corinne and Laura from the AWA in helping support this platform, and my colleagues at WASA for helping me kind of facilitate this discussion and bring this all to you today. So hopefully still online, looks still online. I'd like to thank our panelists once again. Carolyn Davis, Program Director, Strategy and Reconciliation at Water Corporation, and Veronica Murphy, First Nations Inclusion Specialist at Sydney Water. Thank you both so much for presenting today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Taylor.